It was supposed to be my future. The money that would get me out of the small town, away from the expectations, the limits. And then one day I found out it was gone. $187,000. Stolen. By the people I trusted most. My own parents. But what they didn't know was that my grandma had a plan, and she wasn't going to let them get away with it. The world around me felt like it was spinning, but I couldn't move. My feet were frozen in place, eyes locked on the bank statement that mocked me with its glaring emptiness. The number on the screen didn't match the number in my head, the number I had lived with, dreamed about, worked for, and counted on. That number had been my escape, my ticket to a different life. But now that future had slipped through my fingers, and I was left to stare at the consequences. $187,000 gone. I blinked, thinking that maybe I was misreading the numbers. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the bank had made an error. I hit refresh on the page, hoping to see the balance come back, to see that somehow it was all just a mistake. But no, the numbers remained the same. And with each passing second, the realization set in deeper my college fund, the money my parents promised me had vanished. My heart pounded in my chest as panic and disbelief hit me in waves. I tried to breathe, to focus, but it was like the world was crashing around me. This wasn't just money. This was my dream. My hope for something better than the small-town life I had always felt trapped in. This was supposed to be my future, my way out. And now it was gone. I didn't know what to do. I felt the tears start to sting my eyes, but I blinked them away. No, I couldn't cry. I had to stay calm. But no matter how hard I tried, the overwhelming sense of betrayal continued to flood me, drowning everything else. I didn't even know where my parents were at that moment. My mom, who had always been the one to remind me that everything I worked for was for a better future. My dad, who would pat me on the head and say, "We're doing this for you. This money's for your future." And now I felt like they'd been lying to me all along. How could they do this to me, to their own daughter? I couldn't hold it in anymore. My hand trembled as I grabbed my phone, dialing my mother's number. It rang twice before she picked up. "Hey, honey, what's wrong?" Her voice sounded too calm, too distant. "Mom," I couldn't even say the words at first. The lump in my throat was too big, too suffocating. What happened to the college fund? I could barely get the words out. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. A silence so thick that it felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for her to speak. And then finally I heard her voice again, but this time it cracked. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Your father, he took the money to help your brother." Her words sliced through me like a blade. Help my brother? I couldn't even process what that meant. I needed to hear it again. It didn't make sense. "What do you mean? What do you mean you took it? Where is it? The money's gone." My voice was rising now, a mix of disbelief and anger. There was another silence. Then the words came, barely a whisper. "We used it for James, for his business. He needed it." James, my older brother who had dropped out of college a year ago, decided to start his business, which had been nothing more than a failed project from the beginning. He had no plan, no backup, just a dream that my parents indulged because, well, he was their golden child. James never had to work for anything. They showered him with affection, and I, the older daughter, was always the afterthought. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was racing, spinning with the weight of what she had just said. They took my money for him, for that failure of a business? "Mom," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "you promised me that money. You promised I'd be able to go to college. What am I supposed to do now?" "I know, honey, I know," she said, her voice breaking. "But your brother, he really needed it. He was so lost, and we thought it was the right thing to do." The right thing? The words felt like venom on my tongue. The right thing was giving it to me, the one who's actually worked hard, who had a plan. But no, you gave it to him. For what? For his failed business? I heard her choke back a sob. "Please, just understand. We didn't mean for this to hurt you." I closed my eyes, the pain in my chest making it hard to breathe. I wanted to scream, to curse, to throw something. I felt my entire life fall apart, piece by piece. The foundation of everything I had trusted, everything I had worked toward, was now shattered. Later that night, I sat alone in my room, the weight of it all crushing me. The quiet of the house only amplified the silence in my mind. I couldn't stop replaying the moment my mother had confessed. How could they do this to me? I thought back to all the times they'd spoken about my future, about how they wanted the best for me. They said they were putting the money away for me, for college, for a better life. But it had been a lie. They didn't care about my future. They cared about saving face for James. They cared about making sure he didn't have to suffer the consequences of his own choices. Suddenly, my grandmother's face appeared in my mind. She'd always been the strong one in the family, the one who never let anyone walk all over her. Grandma had been the one who encouraged me to dream, to aim for something more than the suffocating expectations of our small town. She had always told me that I could do whatever I wanted if I worked hard enough. But she also warned me time and time again about the dangers of trusting people too much. That warning was echoing in my head now. My parents had betrayed me, but it wasn't just the money. It was the trust they had broken. It was the way they had made me feel like I was less than James, like I didn't deserve what was rightfully mine. I stood up from my desk and walked over to the window, staring out at the town that seemed so distant now. How could they have done this to me? How could they take everything I worked for and just give it away to him? I had spent so many years making sure I was the good daughter, the one who followed the rules. But no matter how hard I tried, I was never enough. The anger started to bubble up inside me, slow at first, like a fire flickering to life. It was rage not just at what they had done, but at the years I had wasted believing their lies, believing that they would always be there for me. They had stolen my dream, and I would never let them get away with it. But I couldn't just lash out in anger. No, I needed to think. I needed to make them feel the weight of what they had done to me. I wasn't going to let them walk away unscathed. And then the idea came to me. It was a slow, creeping thought at first, like a whisper in the back of my mind, revenge. I wasn't sure how it would happen or what exactly I would do, but I knew one thing. I would make them regret this. I would make them understand the pain they had caused. And if they thought they could get away with this betrayal, they were sorely mistaken. Grandma had always known how to get things done. She wasn't the type to sit around and wait for someone to fix things. If anyone knew how to make people pay, it was her. I closed my eyes, imagining her steely gaze, her determination. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone. I had a plan. And with that thought, I took my first step toward revenge. But as I moved forward, a part of me couldn't help but wonder, would this make me feel better? Or would it only make me more bitter? For now, I didn't care. I would make them pay, and that was all that mattered. The path I was about to walk was not an easy one. It was filled with anger, with pain, and with uncertainty. But one thing was clear, I would not let them get away with it. Not this time. And as the plan began to form in my mind, I couldn't help but wonder what the consequences of my actions would be. Would it be worth it? Would it bring me peace? Or would it only tear me apart further? But one thing was certain. I was done being the victim. This time they would pay. The days after discovering the theft of my college fund felt like I was walking through a fog. The world seemed distant, muted, as if I were trapped behind glass. I tried to go through the motions, pretending I could go back to the life I once knew, but everything had changed. There was no going back. The realization that the people I trusted, most my own parents, had stolen my future felt like a dark, suffocating cloud pressing down on me, never letting me breathe. At first, I couldn't fully comprehend it. I kept asking myself the same question over and over again, as though somehow I had missed something. How could they do this to me? The answer never came. The more I thought about it, the deeper the hole in my heart grew. I tried to talk to them. I needed an explanation, something that could make sense of it all. But each conversation felt like I was hitting a wall. They were sorry, they said. They apologized, begged me to understand. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to undo what they had done. and I couldn't let it go. Flashbacks of happier times haunted me. There were moments when I'd sit in my room late at night, my mind wandering back to those days when things felt right. When we were a family, at least, I thought we were. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, my mother always so warm, always so kind. We'd talk about my future, about how the money was being saved up for me, about the dreams we all shared for my success. It seemed so real then. I had been their bright hope, their shining star. My mother would always smile and say, "You'll get there, sweetheart. You'll go places we never could. You'll go to college, you'll make a name for yourself. We're doing this for you." And every time she said that, I believed her. I trusted her. But now that trust felt like a cruel joke. I could feel the sting of betrayal deep in my chest every time I remembered those moments. How could they say they were doing this for me when they had taken everything away from me without a second thought? It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the fact that my college fund had been stolen. It was the complete unraveling of everything I had believed in. The walls of my trust, built over years of love and devotion, came crashing down with a single revelation. My parents had chosen James over me. They had chosen to believe in his broken dreams over my future. It wasn't even a simple mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing. My mother, my father, both of them knew. They had sacrificed my future for James' failed business. And for what? So he could feel better about himself? So he wouldn't have to face the reality of his own failures? And I was the one left to pick up the pieces. The anger surged through me like a tidal wave, a surge of heat in my veins that I couldn't control. I wanted to scream, to lash out at them, to make them feel the pain they had caused me. But no words could express what I felt. No amount of anger could bring back what they had taken from me. In the silence of my room, I began to think. I thought about everything I had worked for, every late night, every sacrifice I had made to prove myself. I had done everything right. I had followed the rules. But it didn't matter. It was all for nothing. But the more I thought about it, the more something inside me began to shift. I had always been taught to forgive. But forgiveness felt impossible. This wasn't a small mistake. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated. This was intentional. I sat at my desk, staring at the blank screen in front of me, the weight of my emotions pressing on me, suffocating me. The thought of revenge was foreign to me at first. I had never been the type of person to seek vengeance. But now everything had changed. They had taken my future, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I thought about Grandma. She was the only one who seemed to understand me, the only one who had always stood by my side. She had always seen through the lies, always known when something was wrong. I remembered all the time she had warned me about my parents' indulgence of James. "He'll never learn if they keep enabling him," she'd said, her voice sharp and firm. "Don't let them make you feel small just because of him." Grandma had always been a fighter. She never let anyone walk all over her. And now, as I sat there in the darkness of my room, I realized something. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't forgive them, not yet. Not after what they had done to me. I needed to make them understand. I needed them to feel the weight of their actions. The rage simmering inside me began to settle into something colder, something more calculated. Revenge. The word seemed strange in my mind, but it began to feel like the only thing that could bring me peace. If they thought they could take everything I had worked for, they had another thing coming. I didn't know what to do next. The plan was still taking shape in my mind, but one thing was clear. I couldn't do it alone. I needed help, and who better to help me than Grandma? She was sharp, clever, and she knew how to make people listen. I could almost hear her voice in my head now, urging me to do something about it. "Make them feel it," she would say. "Make them regret what they did to you." So I called her. It was late at night, and my voice trembled as I spoke to her, but I couldn't help it. She listened patiently, never interrupting, her silence almost comforting. When I finished, there was a long pause before she finally spoke. "You're right," she said, her voice steady and sure. "You've been wronged, and they need to feel it. But be careful. You're not like them. Don't let their mistakes turn you into something you're not." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I nodded, Even though she couldn't see me, she was right. I wasn't like them. But I couldn't let them get away with this. I couldn't let them ruin my life and walk away without consequences. The next few days were filled with tension. I spent every waking moment planning, trying to figure out how to make my parents feel the weight of what they had done. But no matter what I thought of, it never seemed enough. I wasn't sure how to strike at them in a way that would make them understand. And every time I thought about it, I felt a sinking pit in my stomach. The rage, the anger, it was all there waiting to explode. But there was something else too. A deep, gnawing sense of guilt. I didn't want to become like them. I didn't want to turn into someone who would stop at nothing to destroy another person, even if they deserved it. I walked around the house, the walls closing in on me. I could hear their voices in the other room, talking about James' latest business venture, laughing about how they had saved him. It was a reminder of everything I had lost, of everything they had taken from me. And yet, the more I listened, the more I realized something. They didn't even see what they had done. They didn't understand the gravity of their actions. They didn't understand the depth of my pain. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. If they didn't understand, then I had to make them understand. I had to make them see how their actions had torn me apart. And that was when the plan started to take shape in my mind, slowly at first, then with more clarity. I couldn't just confront them directly. I had to make them feel the consequences of their choices, feel the weight of their betrayal in a way that they would never forget. It wasn't going to be easy. I had no idea what the aftermath would be. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to back down. They had taken everything from me, and I would make sure they understood what it felt like to lose it all. As the plan began to solidify in my mind, I felt the first stirrings of something stronger than anger. I felt the determination. This was happening. I was taking matters into my own hands, and I wouldn't stop until they paid for what they had done to me. And as I stood there in the quiet of the house, listening to the sounds of my parents' voices in the other room, I made a decision. I was done being the victim. I was done letting them control my future. This was my fight now. And they were going to regret crossing me. The moment of reckoning was coming, and nothing would stop me. The anger that had been simmering inside me for days was beginning to fester, each thought of my parents' betrayal pushing me further into a cold, dark place. I sat in my room, the walls closing in around me as I replayed everything that had happened over the past few weeks. The numbness was starting to wear off, and in its place, a sense of clarity began to form. It was a cruel, bitter clarity, the kind that only comes when you realize the people you trust the most have used you for their own gain, leaving you in the ruins of your own dreams. I couldn't help but think back to those moments of happiness, the days when things seemed perfect. My parents had always been the ones who told me everything would be okay. They were my rock, the ones who promised me a better future, a way out of the small town where nothing ever seemed to change. The fun they had saved for me wasn't just money, it was a ticket to a life where I could make something of myself, where I wouldn't have to follow the same path they had. But now it was gone, my dreams stolen just like that. And what made it worse was the fact that it wasn't some cruel twist of fate. It was their choice. They made that decision. They betrayed me, and they didn't even have the decency to feel guilty about it. They acted as though it was no big deal, like they were doing it all for the greater good of family. The words they spoke still echoed in my mind. We needed it for James. He's struggling, and he's our priority right now. James, my brother, the one who had always been their golden child, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. He had dropped out of college, chasing a pipe dream that he had no business pursuing. He had no plan, no ambition, just a fantasy that he could somehow build a successful business from nothing. And instead of seeing him for what he was, someone who had made bad choices and needed to face the consequences, they gave him my future. My money, my life. It was a slap in the face. The betrayal didn't just shake my trust in them. It broke something inside me that I didn't know could be broken. I felt like a fool. All those years of believing in their promises, of thinking that they cared for my success as much as I did. I could almost see the scenes playing out in my mind. Sitting at the dinner table, laughing together as a family, my parents talking about my future as though they were my biggest supporters. But now it all felt hollow. It felt like a lie. I remembered my mom's warm smile, how she would tell me, "You're going to be something big. We're doing all this for you." But now I wondered, was it all just words? Was I just the one they used to make themselves feel better about their own failures? And James, how could he take that money, knowing it was meant for me? How could he stand by, watching it all unfold and not say a word? I wanted to hate him. I wanted to lash out at him, to tell him how much he had ruined my life. But there was a part of me that still cared for him, that still hoped he would one day grow up and take responsibility for his own actions. I couldn't understand how my parents could be so blind, so willing to sacrifice me for him. I closed my eyes, letting the anger flood my senses, the fury burning hot inside me. It was almost suffocating, the feeling of being betrayed by those who were supposed to protect me. But then something shifted. A new, colder resolve began to form. I wasn't going to sit back and let them get away with this. No more! Grandma. I thought about her often now, remembering her sharp, calculating eyes, her words that always rang with the truth, no matter how harsh it might be. Grandma had never let anyone walk all over her. She fought for what she believed in, and that's exactly what I needed to do. I couldn't do this alone. But with Grandma's help, maybe, just maybe, I could make them feel what I was feeling. I needed to make them understand. I needed to make them regret taking my future away. The more I thought about it, the clearer the plan became. I would make them see the consequences of their actions. I would make sure they understood the weight of what they had done, but I couldn't do it in a way that would hurt me in the long run. This couldn't be about petty revenge. It had to be about justice, about restoring what was taken from me. The more I pieced together my thoughts, the more I realized how calculated and deliberate this needed to be. I had to be smart about it. This couldn't just be about me confronting them. It couldn't be about screaming or crying or fighting. It had to be more subtle than that, more impactful. It had to be something they couldn't ignore. I spent the next few days going over my plan. There were risks, of course. They were my parents, after all. They had always been my parents. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little they deserved my loyalty now. They didn't deserve my trust, my forgiveness. They had proven that. And if they didn't see the error of their ways, then I had to make them see it. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table, pretending to be just another daughter, just another person in the house. They were sitting across from me, talking about James and his business, their voices rising in excitement about his latest so-called success. It was too much. The lies, the deceit. I couldn't take it anymore. I looked at them, the faces I once trusted, and something inside me snapped. The anger, the pain, it was all there, bubbling to the surface. But instead of saying anything, I stayed silent. I listened. I let them dig their own grave. As the days passed, I could feel the tension building inside me. My plan was taking shape, but every moment felt like it was taking longer than it should have. I could feel my heart racing with anticipation, but at the same time, there was a knot of doubt in my stomach. Was this the right thing to do? Was I turning into something I hated? Every time I thought about it, I felt a pang of guilt. Revenge wasn't something I had ever sought before. But this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. This was about showing them the pain they had caused me. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine and making them realize that their choices had consequences. But even then, a part of me struggled with the guilt. Was this the right way to do it? Should I confront them, talk to them, and let them know how deeply they had hurt me? Or should I let the consequences of their actions hit them like a freight train without warning? The conflicting emotions inside me were almost too much to bear. I walked around the house, pacing, trying to clear my thoughts. The weight of it all pressed on me. I could still feel the warmth of the memories, the love that had once been there. But now that love felt like a lie. I looked out the window, the quiet streets of the small town stretching out before me. How could I ever go back to the way things were? How could I ever look at my parents the same way again? The trust I had placed in them had been shattered beyond repair. And yet, despite everything, a small part of me still hoped, still wanted them to understand, to come to their senses and apologize. But I knew deep down that they would never do that. They would never see the pain they had caused. They would never acknowledge the betrayal. The decision had been made. There was no going back now. I had to follow through with my plan. I couldn't let them get away with this. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the person staring back at me. Who was I now? Was I still the person who had trusted them, who had believed in their promises? Or was I someone else entirely, someone who was capable of making them feel the same pain I had felt? The person in the mirror looked uncertain, but I knew what I had to do. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be without consequences, but I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. I wasn't going to let them take my future. And I wasn't going to let them destroy me. It was time to make them feel it. As I walked out of the house that evening, my heart heavy with what I was about to do, I knew one thing for sure. They were going to regret what they had done to me. And nothing would stop me.